Admit it.
I understand that the Singapore government is, they're going to bring back caning. You know, they cane people over there. If you don't get out of the country,
I don't think they got rid of it.
They're like, when is Hannity going to ever leave? He's going to... Anyway, your family wants you home, Hannity, so get back home safe. Fantastic show with Rudy tonight. Loved it.
Only 22 hours. That's it. I'll be on a plane watching Braveheart over and over and over again.
Patton. No, Braveheart and Patton. Okay, get it right.
Freedom.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks so much. All right. Good evening from Washington. I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle. The Inspector General's bombshell report on the FBI and DOJ rocking the nation's capital. As a result, the IG has referred five FBI employees for investigation. Now, we have full analysis and reaction tonight from every angle, including the first remarks from the House Intel Chair, Devin Nunes. Here are the highlights to bring you up to speed really quickly. The report from the DOJ Inspector General Mike Horowitz on the Hillary email investigation found that former FBI Director Jim Comey did not follow the Bureau's procedures. Comey's actions damaged the FBI's image of impartiality. Amazingly, Comey still refuses, though, to admit that he was wrong. He magically wrote it so fast in today's New York Times, quote, "Nothing in the Inspector General's report makes me think we did the wrong thing." Now, remember, it was that very insubordination by Comey that Trump cited when he fired the FBI director in 2017. And now the DOJ's Inspector General agrees. Now, maybe the most shocking revelation was a vow to stop Trump from becoming president. In an exchange between FBI lovebirds Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, Page texted, "He's not ever going to become president, right? And he replied, no, he's not. We'll stop it." Remember how highly placed these two were in all of this. Strzok was the FBI's lead investigator in the Clinton email probe, and a top investigator sliding seamlessly in to the special counsel's Russia investigation. Busy boy. Page was a senior FBI lawyer who also was on the Mueller team. So some good gigs. Remember, it is President Trump who the left said was damaging our institutions. Him, not the rest.
President Trump will stop at nothing to discredit the institutions that are meant to keep leaders honest.
But the level of lying in this administration has already greatly exceeded that which was done in the Nixon administration. And I think it's sort of silly to compare Nixon and Trump, but this is extraordinarily corrosive and damaging to our system.
Those people are weirdly non-political. They're doing their job. They believe in their job, but they're not super political people.
It sows distrust in our institutions, and I think it's irresponsible, and maybe he needs a history lesson.
Okay, here's a history lesson for you. It's now been revealed that the very people running those institutions did the most damage to them. Despite Strzok and Page's toxic texts, the IG said their bias did not directly affect their actions, which is fairly astounding. It's a shocking finding, really, when you take into account all that we've learned. Now, let's review today's report with our top-notch panel of experts. Saul Weisenberg was the Whitewater Deputy Independent Counsel who interviewed, remember, President Clinton, retired FBI Special Agent Bobby Chacon, and John Solomon, investigative reporter for The Hill. All right, I want to get to so much with all of you. John Solomon, of all the things we learned in this report, to you, what is the most shocking?
I don't think anything's shocking. We've been reporting this for months, right?
No, thanks. That's a great line. That's a great lead-in to the segment.
But there is a really consequential thing about this report. The president is reportedly under investigation for obstruction for firing James Comey. This report makes clear he wasn't fired for stopping the Russia case. He was fired because he was incompetent. He violated the Justice Department rules. If you're the president's lawyers, you have a get-out-of-jail card with Bob Mueller with this report. It makes clear he should have been fired for insubordination.
In May 2017, I want Saul to react to this. Mueller was appointed special counsel, and the next day, Strzok and Page exchanged texts. And the discussion is whether Strzok should join the special counsel's investigation. And Strzok wrote, For me, in this case, I personally have a sense of unfinished business. I unleashed it with the mid-year investigation, MYE. Now I need to fix it and finish it. So when Solomon says he's not shocked by anything in this, sorry, John, that is a shocking revelation. He wants to finish it. Big talk from such a little man. Saul.
Well, you know, it's shocking. Something can be shocking but not surprising. And he shouldn't have, I've said before, even if we didn't know any of this stuff, he had no business transferring over to the Russiagate investigation or whatever you want to call it. But I think I look at the OIG report, and I think they do say that Strzok is biased and left a big cloud over the organization. What they said is, we can't say that other people made decisions too, and we can't say that his decisions, that his bias infected them. But you look at one thing in particular that is stunning in this report and is very ironic. The OIG cannot explain. They said there's no rational explanation why, after they found over 300,000 Clinton emails on the Wiener laptop in late September, the FBI did nothing for a month. I say that it's ironic because it's pretty clear there's a real possibility they did nothing because they thought it would hurt Mrs. Clinton during the election. But by waiting so long, when they finally were pressured by the Southern District of New York and decided they had to act, Director Comey said, well, I had to make my statement because I didn't think to Congress, because I didn't think we'd finish analyzing the emails before the election. If he had done his job, if they had all done their job in late September when they learned about the Clinton emails on the Wiener laptop, they would have been finished and he wouldn't have made that incredibly damaging announcement. And I think the reason that they just stood down is because they didn't want to hurt Mrs. Clinton. I see no other rational explanation for that, and neither does Mr. Horowitz. He doesn't say we had any proof of it. He just says we can't understand this.
Yeah, we can't explain it.
It's really amazing.
On page 294 of the report, Bobby, there's this, it kind of jumps out of the page at you. It's titled Hillary Clinton and Foundation, Crime Against Children. And it's referencing all the emails that were on this Wiener laptop. And there was an effort to, I guess, sequester certain emails away from the probe. You can see, Coleman's notes from October 4th contain the following entry: Anthony Weiner, unrelated. Anthony Weiner texting 15-year-old sexually explicit initial analysis of laptop, thousands of emails, etc. But they had a conversation about which emails would be allowed to be looked at in this case and which would be set aside. And that also raises a lot of questions. I mean, Huma Abedin and Hillary Clinton exchanged thousands of emails, apparently, that were not, I don't think they were looked at in this investigation at all. And, Bobby, your reaction to where we are here.
Yeah, I think that specific question, has to do with the search warrants. So the New York office of the FBI, who actually initially got the search warrant on that laptop, it was for that sexual crimes case against Anthony Weiner. And that had specificity requirements of the warrant say you can only look for certain things. So they were looking for emails of that type. When it was transferred down to Washington for the Clinton email, they were looking for different things. And that's why the call went to New York, from New York to Washington 2 weeks later, saying, hey, did you guys get your warrant? You need to get a warrant for the stuff that you want to look for on that laptop. And to Saul's point, it's my opinion, this is only my opinion, that I think they were sitting on that laptop and they thought they could sit on it till after the election. But when New York called down and said, what are you doing with this? Why haven't you gotten a warrant yet for your stuff? That panicked them. They then went and told Comey. I don't even think Comey knew, because he claims not to have known, but there's no reason why he didn't know. Didn't he go to McCabe and say, why did you wait 2 weeks before you brought this to me?
Oh, come on.
It's just not, it's beyond the pale. It's not believable.
Yeah. And remember, Obama supposedly didn't know anything either, guys. Solomon, I got to get you to weigh in on this. Right. Remember back in 2015 when the Hillary private server classified information thing blew up, the president was asked a question by Bill Plant. Let's watch.
Mr. President, when did you first learn that Hillary Clinton used an email system outside the U.S. government?
Everybody else learned it through news reports.
That was a lie. That was a lie. Page 425. We want to be really specific on this show tonight so people understand that we're actually going through this report. There are a lot of headline readers who are going to say, oh, there's nothing in this report. There's a lot in this report. It's fascinating. We identified numerous instances in which Comey used a sorry, I'm reading the wrong thing. Where's the one I'm supposed to read, Tommy? Yeah, I'll just read it off the screen. FBI analyst and prosecutor 2 told us that former President Barack Obama was one of the 13 individuals with whom Clinton had direct contact using her ClintonEmail.com account. One of 13 people. He had a pseudonym, like a lot of presidents do, with his official email, but he lied about it.
There's no doubt.
Why did he lie about it? Why wouldn't he say, yeah, you know something, I think I might have?
It's a great question. We don't know the answer, and someone should ask President Obama. There's a lot of things about the Clinton email case that go back to the idea that she was treated differently and that there are still unprosecuted crimes, still under the statute of limitations, that this FBI and this Justice Department could potentially look at. One of them is the destruction of the server. How could it be that a Clinton team instructed someone or caused someone to destroy emails that were under subpoena by Congress and no one's been charged? They get immunity, they move on. I want to make one other thing that Sal said that was really important today. He talked about the difference in the way they handle this. In October, Strzok was the guy that made the decision. We're going to prioritize Trump over Hillary Clinton, reopening Hillary Clinton. That says that in the report. He made a conscious decision to prioritize Trump. This is the man that wanted to defeat Trump.
And let's not forget what what the IG did say is they cannot rule out bias in the decision to prioritize Russia and Trump over Hillary. Could not rule it out. He soft-pedaled that, though. I got to say, Horowitz, everybody's like, Horowitz great. He seemed to soft pedal a lot here. I know you can only conclude with the documents. I get that, but it was really, it didn't put yourself into a pretzel to come across as light on some of these guys as I think he did. I want to read something that I know, Saul, you're very interested in about Paul Combetta, who was the individual who worked for Hillary Clinton involving the deletion of emails and so forth. This is page 147 of the report. Don't we all feel like we're back in law school here, Saul? 147. Get your highlighters out. Wait, which Holman? Now I'm getting everything. 103. Guys, I'm sorry, we have so many pages. Here it is. Combetta stated that only he and one other administrator had the ability to delete a mailbox from the server. When the agent showed him the documentation indicating that an administrator had manually deleted backup files and used BleachBit on March 31st, 2015, he stated that he did not recall. In addition, he stated that he could not recall the content of the March 25th, 2015 call with Kendall and Mills. In sum, Combetta took responsibility for the deletions without implicating Clinton or her attorneys. Saul.
Well, just think, you look at this is just absolutely sickening how they handled this person, Combetta. First of all, in their opinion, he had lied to them twice in regular interviews, and he had then declined to answer certain questions invoking the Fifth Amendment. But the agents thought, and the prosecutors thought he had lied, and they thought they had a decent chance. I think they had enough to do an indictment. Now, if this had been Bob Mueller, think of what he did to Papadopoulos. If this had been Bob Mueller or any other aggressive special counsel, they would have indicted him and put the fear of God into him and then tried to flip him. Here, he lies to them twice. They give him immunity. And he comes in and finally admits that he obstructed justice, which is what they suspected, by erasing items that were under subpoena or under an order to preserve them. But after admitting that, he says, you know what, that crucial conversation I had about these deletions on March 25th with David Kendall and Cheryl Mills, I can't remember anything about that. Now, this to me, I know everybody's down on special counsels, but this to me is why there should have been a special counsel in this investigation, because a special counsel comes in and does a serious investigation, is a prominent person who is not intimidated by Mrs. Clinton or anybody else or David Kendall, and puts the fear of God into people. And that simply wasn't done here. I mean, in addition to all of that, the decision at the end, I mean, they had already given up, but the decision at the end to let Cheryl Mills and Ms. Samuelson just sit in on the investigation of Mrs. Clinton, and the excuses for why they didn't issue a grand jury subpoena are just absolutely appalling to me. Again,
Bobby,
this is just not the way Bob Mueller would have done it.
Yeah, so, Bobby, I'd have to ask you, we also learned a couple other things. We learned that Jim Comey himself used a Gmail account for his official business. So it's like contagious here, okay? So he uses an unsecure email account to do FBI business, number one. Number two, we learned that FBI agents routinely got little perks and benefits from journalists when they had no business talking to journalists. I guess they got tickets to things, dinners and the like. What about that? Yeah, I mean, so they got treated to drinks and meals after work, golf outings. What is that? And by the way, some of them were attorneys. They were attorneys.
Yeah, it's hard to understand what was going on there. You know, the rank and file out in the field office of the FBI often rolls its eyes at a lot of things that FBI headquarters does, and I'm sure that's happening, today and will happen tomorrow. I mean, we often, keep our distance from FBI headquarters. It's unbelievable now to hear, this stuff coming out. First of all, these guys never should have been running an investigation. These investigations should have been run out of the Washington field office by experienced agents who do this day in and day out. These were FBI managers who are not investigators. They left the investigative world years ago to go into the management chain and work their way up. So these are not seasoned investigators, no matter what they want to call themselves. This needed to be done out of a field office. FBI headquarters provides oversight, but they shouldn't be the one making the investigative decisions. And because as you get higher in any bureaucracy, you become more politically sensitive. This was being done by politically sensitive people. Now, to Saul's point, I think that there's a stark difference between these two investigations, the Clinton investigation and the Russian investigation. And since we have the same basic investigative team starting out both, we need to know why there was a difference. Well, now we know. Now we know the biases that were brought to the table. Now we know that, Strzok, he wanted to reprioritize the Russian investigation over the Clinton email investigation. They were wholly done differently. I still want to know why a grand jury was never seated for the Clinton email investigation. It was a very, not very aggressive investigation, in my opinion. You have to seat a grand jury. You have to issue grand jury subpoenas. You have to put people under oath before a grand jury if you want to do a serious and aggressive investigation.
There were some subpoenas. Just to make it clear, there were some grand jury subpoenas, but no witnesses were ever forced to come to the grand jury.
No, and people are given immunity who should never have been given immunity. In one point, they were shocked that, I think it was Cheryl Mills, who was in a meeting when they were discussing whether to subpoena Hillary Clinton. What is Cheryl Mills doing, a close associate of Mrs. Clinton, doing in an FBI conversation about whether to issue this subpoena?
A potential witness in the same case.
This is like, Saul, you learned this, right, in ethics class in law school, right? Continuing legal education. Do we actually have to do that, I guess, for the FBI? I mean, this is insanity, complete craziness. Anyway, great panel. Great panel to all of you. Thank you so much for your insights.
Laura.
And I want you to stay right there for important reaction to the IG report. You're not going to see anywhere else. My exclusive interview with the House Intel Chair, Devin Nunes, just moments away.
It's the Father's Day sale at Ace. Save $100 on what Dad really wants.
Continuing coverage of the IG report out today. Well, despite a number of explosive revelations, some lawmakers are still suggesting that parts may have been redacted. Joining me now to give us exclusive reaction is House Intel Chair Devin Nunes. Congressman, this is what we've all been waiting for. On this matter, on the Hillary email matter, your initial reaction?
The first thing I can think of is there was information that we got today at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, that actually Chairman Gowdy had to call and tell me what it was, text messages that we had been asking for since late last year. Now, these are text messages that clearly were pertinent to our investigation into FISA abuse and the Russia investigation, whether or not there was collusion. These are emails or text messages that somebody held from us. So every day that goes by, there is a new example of obstruction of a congressional investigation.
So I want to read to you an exchange between Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, the star-crossed lovers. She basically said, she was, we're worried. Donald Trump's not going to get elected, right? And he answers, basically, don't worry, we'll stop it. No, we'll stop it.
Right.
What does that tell you?
Well, what's
the
worse,
lead investigator. The lead investigator.
Okay, he was the lead investigator on the Clinton email case. He's the lead investigator that starts off the counterintelligence investigation using our intelligence agencies to go after and target the Trump campaign. This is the guy who leads that off. But worse than all that, and I just want to repeat what I said in the opening. Why wasn't that given to Congress? Why did I find out about that today at noon? I mean, this is a classic case of obstruction. But then the question is, who's going to go investigate these guys? I mean, we're going to come out, we're going to be very transparent with the American people. We're ultimately going to get all the documents that we want. And ultimately, this is all going to spill out. And then people are going to ask, well, what are you going to do? Who's going to get busted? Who's going to go to jail?
So Lisa Page's text was released before, but the Strzok, don't worry, we'll stop it. No, we'll stop it.
Right.
That came today.
And how could that have possibly been redacted? And that's the problem. They keep blacking things out across the board, not giving us documents that at the end of the day always end up being very pertinent to our investigation.
The IG wrote the following in one part of the report. Under these circumstances, we did not have confidence that Strzok's decision to prioritize the Russia investigation over the following up on the mid-year related investigative lead discovered on the Wiener laptop was free from bias. So the IG cannot confidently state that decision was not free from bias. But they're all dining out on the fact on the left, well, there was no political bias on the part of Comey that was found. So they're trying to really downplay it.
Yeah, and let me tell you what we know about that at the time. So we actually had, and I've never actually said this before, because we had whistleblowers, but we couldn't really use the information. But now that it's in the IG report, we can. We had whistleblowers that came to us in late September of 2016 who talked to us about this laptop sitting up in New York that had additional emails on it. I mean, the House Intelligence Committee, we had that, but we couldn't do anything with it.
When was that again?
In 2016.
What, do you know when exactly?
I think it was late September.
Okay, so ultimately, they didn't move on this until late October.
So good FBI agents brought this to our attention, but what could we do with it?
Well, there's another exchange I want to bring to your attention.
Because you know why? I say that because it was all classified. And this is the game that Comey and company have been playing, is they hide behind this top
classification.
Secret,
can't talk about it. Well, they all thought Hillary was going to win. And rocking the boat was tough. He made a decision to go after that laptop because he thought, oh, if someone finds out about it, they're going to think the whole election was illegitimate. And then they quickly dispensed with it. Nothing here to worry about.
And you know what? That's true. But also what's true is that I think the same people in charge today still believe they can run the clock out. And they're trying to run the clock out for the rest of this Congress so we can't finish our investigations.
Are there still people in the FBI today who believe they operate by a different set of rules?
At the top. At the top, I think that is still true. I mean, we heard some great words today from Christopher Wray, the new director. But I will tell you, it's a little bit frustrating because we've had these very conversations with him many months ago where we said, look, you're not responsible for any of this. You need to clean this up, and we'll support you in cleaning this up. But yet, here it is. Today, we get this text message at noon today, one that's absolutely pertinent to our investigation. Now, maybe they have a good excuse for it, but The problem with it is if they didn't give it to us, it's a problem. But if they didn't know about it, it's an even bigger problem because who was obstructing the investigation?
All right, there's some other things we got to get to. There's another exchange. FBI attorney sent number 2. They don't identify who this is, and I think it's important to know who this is. For some reason, we can't get the person's name. FBI attorney number 2 sent an instant message to FBI attorney number 1, commenting on the amount of money the subject of an FBI investigation had been paid while working on the Trump campaign. Someone they were looking at, how much they get paid. FBI attorney 1 says, is it making you rethink your commitment to the Trump administration? FBI attorney number 2 says, hell no, vive la resistance.
Yeah, it's awful. It's awful.
I mean, the resistance to Trump winning is apparently, I mean, for all we know, still working at the FBI. So and they're blowing this off on other networks saying this isn't important.
Well, now there's 5. I think there's 5 now. The IG report, I think, and I have to get through it all, but there's 5 people who have been kicked off the campaign, right? So if there's 5 people who have been kicked off the campaign, or I mean, off the Mueller team, how is it possible that if you look at the rest of the people that are there, I mean, they were all Clinton donors. So, I don't know how this is going to end up fairly. I don't know where this is
Should
going.
we learn the names of these attorneys who are sending these messages? We're part of the resistance?
I don't know why. Unless they're an undercover agent.
An attorney. They're identified as attorneys.
Then it should not be classified name, no. Unless they're working undercover, then it should not be classified.
We also have
this is the type of stuff that always happens.
So now I know how you feel because I feel like it's happening to the whole country now. So there was another issue involving the employees, FBI employees at every level of the organization. This is from the report. With no official reason to be in contact with the media, who were nevertheless in frequent contact with reporters. The large number of FBI employees who were in contact with journalists during this time period impacted our ability to identify the sources of leaks. We also found out, of course, they were getting benefits from journalists, getting perks, getting tickets, getting meals.
They've been leaking like crazy. But the problem with it is the IG report discovered that this happened a couple years ago. But don't forget the leak that just occurred last week, where at midnight the Department of Justice sends out this that Devin Nunes and Paul Ryan had a chance to read documents and they didn't read them. I mean, remember that? That was a leak in the middle of the night, a midnight kind of press release, so that we would wake up in the morning and have to answer all this new narrative that they're creating, that Republicans ask for documents and don't read them. I mean, this is what we're dealing with. So it's not as if the leaks have actually stopped. Now they're just doing it. It's the FBI people that were leaking. Now it's just like at the top level of the Department of Justice that's leaking.
There was a few people in the media today, more than a few, downplaying all of this. I want to play for you a little short montage. Let's watch.
I expected a sledgehammer. We just got the same kind of hammer you use to nail in a painting on the wall. I was surprised at how mild it was.
If you look at this assault on the FBI that has taken place over the last year and a half, that has been the clarion call of some of the opposition, saying that these are crooks, they're corrupt, they tried to throw an election. This report does not say that.
Congressman.
Well, if you look at the one gentleman on there, I mean, that's a guy that's one of Comey's buddies. He was working at the FBI. I mean, look, this is a lot of these agencies, or a lot of the other networks have just hired all these former FBI and DOJ and Clinton people and Obama people. I mean, that's just what this is.
Yeah, Josh Campbell, old buddy of Comey. So nothing there to see. This is all good. Congressman, you still have a lot more to get to with the Russia investigation, and you'll still be going after these documents.
We're almost there. We're almost there. But there's a reason why they've been hiding these documents for 2 months.
And this report
is probably
confirms.
Very similar to what you found in the IG report.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you coming in tonight.
Anytime. Thank you.
I have my own take on runaway prosecutors at the highest levels of government. You do not want to miss tonight's angle before Roger Stone and Dinesh D'Souza react. That's coming up in just a minute.
Go to HomeAdvisor.com.
Prosecutors, politics, and personal ambition. That's the focus of tonight's angle. I saw my share of individuals and companies caught in the crosshairs of government investigators who desperately wanted a trophy on the wall. We know the scenes. A CEO arrested and cuffed at his or her office for all the employees to see for maximum humiliation. A prosecutor holding a press conference claiming the evidence will show that some high-profile person is guilty of myriad crimes, meaning jail for the rest of his adult life. It's all high drama. It's all like an episode of Law and Order. Now, of course, we need prosecutors to help lock up the bad guys, whether they're white-collar criminals or violent offenders. And when they're operating professionally, I'm talking about prosecutors, and in good faith, they should be recognized for the public service that they provide. But long before today's IG report was released, come on, most of us knew that the FBI's handling of the Clinton email and Russian probes are textbook examples of how cases should not be handled. Of course, the usual suspects spent most of the day downplaying the findings of the IG. Because the IG found no political bias. Oh, it's just run-of-the-mill insubordination here.
We just got the same kind of hammer you use to nail in a painting on the wall.
The Hillary case was properly decided on the law. And that's the headline number one. Number two, no indication or evidence that political biases.
It's deeply disturbing that the Republicans remain obsessed with undermining our intelligence and law enforcement agencies.
Okay, nice try, Nancy. But the IG's findings show the opposite. As we discussed earlier, the evidence shows that FBI Director Jim Comey operated according to his own set of rules in the Clinton email investigation. Quote, Comey admitted that he concealed his intentions from the DOJ until the morning of his press conference on July 5th and instructed his staff to do the same. We found that it was extraordinary and insubordinate for Comey to do so. We acknowledge that Comey faced difficult choices in late October 2016. However, we found it extraordinary that Comey assessed that it was best that the FBI director not speak directly with the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General. Like so many people in this town, he thought, Jim Comey, that his title gave him license to ignore basic prosecutorial protocols. And no wonder he wasn't all that keen on pursuing Hillary's use of an unsecured server, given the fact that we found out today that he himself was using a personal Gmail account to conduct government business. Even Hillary referenced that in a tweet today. And if you, like I, thought Comey came off as imperious in television interviews for that stupid book of his, check out this tweet. He said today in a tweet, I respect the DOJ IG office, which is why I urge them to do this review. The conclusions are reasonable, even though I disagree with some. People of good faith can see an unprecedented situation differently. I pray no director faces it again. Thanks to IG's people for hard work. Well, he lost me at people of good faith. And notice, by the way, how he makes himself out to be the victim here. It's unbelievable. Comey should change his middle name to Hubris. The man has learned absolutely nothing from this experience. And remember, by the way, this is the guy who signed off on 3 FISA applications and didn't think it was necessary to tell the FISA court that Hillary paid for the Steele dossier. This was the same man who allowed Peter Strzok, the FBI agent, to change the description of Mrs. Clinton's use of the private server from grossly negligent to merely extremely careless, so as not to trigger the underlying criminal statute. But of course, there was this breaking news to compete with the IG release today.
The New York Attorney General has just announced a lawsuit against the Donald J. Trump Foundation.
Filed just less than an hour ago a 41-page civil complaint alleging that the Donald J. Trump Foundation was actually an empty shell.
New York's Attorney General is suing President Trump and his 3 oldest children, alleging, quote, self-dealing and other persistent illegal conduct at the president's charity.
Oh, I'm sure this is all just a coincidence. The timing of this lawsuit, come on, against the Trump Foundation is beyond suspicious. Now, remember, it comes from the New York Attorney General's office. Consider the source. Disgraced former Attorney General of New York, Eric Schneiderman, who you might remember sent out a fundraising email right after the investigation into the foundation was opened. He's a truly odious figure who abused and humiliated his female victims and then used his office and his position to threaten them into silence. Mark my words, we haven't heard the last of what he did to his victims. And the person who continues his crusade, Barbara Underwood, who said upon taking over for Schneiderman, quote, "I believe this job at this moment in history is the most important job I have ever had." Oh yeah, little subtlety there. Well, think about it. Donald Trump operated a foundation that had zero overhead, no administrative costs, and gave away more than $19 million to a variety of charitable causes. Trump and his companies personally poured $8 million into the foundation. Now, there was a mistaken contribution made to Pam Bondi's campaign, but that was rectified once it was discovered. In other words, this is penny ante stuff that would never be pursued by the New York State Attorney General's office if Donald Trump hadn't gotten into politics. This is yet another example of politicized law enforcement, an abuse of process. This time it was through a civil action on the state level. Where were they, by the way, at the federal level when the Clinton Foundation was accepting funds from foreign governments while Hillary was Secretary of State, sometimes then wanting to get meetings with Hillary? Meanwhile, Comey and his political activists, posing as agents, bent the legal standards for Hillary Clinton, allowing her to walk free. And they assumed that she was going to be going into the White House. Let's not forget. Clinton, in setting up that private server, made up her own rules, just as Comey did in clearing her of any criminal wrongdoing. My friends, this is all a hideous perversion of justice. Now FBI Director Christopher Wray is insisting their IG report clears the FBI, though, of structural responsibility.
Nothing in this report impugns the integrity of our workforce as a whole.
Chris Wray, I'm sorry, you're wrong. Chris, there are consequences. The consequences are that your fellow citizens question whether or not they can have confidence in the world's premier law enforcement agency.
Remember when Jim Comey said this, by the way?
It makes me mildly nauseous to think that we might have had some impact on the election.
It makes me wildly nauseous reading this IG report and learning how Comey and his colleagues intended to impact the election. And they failed. And that's the angle. Two men who know all too well what it's like to be targeted by the government. Stay right there, because Roger Stone and Dinesh D'Souza react next. I have time. Joining us now are two men who have been unfairly targeted by investigators, tangled up in that mess. Informal presidential advisor Roger Stone, author of the new book, Stone's Rules, How to Win at Politics, Business and Style, and filmmaker Dinesh D'Souza, whose new movie, Death of a Nation, Can We Save America a Second Time, comes out August 3rd. Looking forward to that. Both of you, it's great to have you both on tonight. So, Dinesh, let's start with you. Whether it's the New York State Attorney General's office going after the Trump Foundation that gave away $19 million with no overhead, no administrative costs, which a lot of wealthy people do. They set up their own private foundations and then donate the money from there. Whether that or the what we find out about the bias of Peter Strzok and the merry band of prosecutors at the IG's from the IG's report, what's your takeaway tonight? What should the American people be thinking?
I think the American people, like me, are arriving at the dismaying realization that in America today, there are quite a few criminals with badges. Now, growing up as I did in India, we had a lot of corruption, and we knew that there were criminals on the street, and there were criminals with badges. But and the criminals with badges are more dangerous because they don't just violate the law, they corrupt the law. They exploit the neutrality that you expect of them. They pervert the democratic process, as Peter Strzok tried to do, by essentially rigging. I mean, think about this. This is unprecedented. The FBI attempting to, in a sense, shape the outcome of a democratic election. So these are terrible things happening now in America. And I think the American people realize that something needs to be done about them. And it's not enough to know about them. Some action needs to be taken.
But it's like you're operating in an alternative universe if you watch any of the other networks tonight. It's no big deal. Let's move on to Stormy Daniels. Roger, I have to read part of this report. A lot of stuff not being covered at all, again, by other media outlets. This is a quote from the report, November 9th, 2016, a text message from an FBI unidentified employee. This is right day after the election. All the people who were initially voting for her, Mrs. Clinton, would not and were not swayed by the decision the FBI put out. In other words, I think the late Weiner emails. Trump's supporters were all poor to middle class, uneducated, lazy POS that think he will magically grant them jobs for doing nothing. They probably didn't watch the debates, aren't fully educated on his policies, and are stupidly wrapped up in his unmerited enthusiasm. Has anything ever encapsulated, Roger, the elite's disdain for the American people?
No, and I think when we get to the bottom of it, we're going to find out that at the end of the day, the Obama Justice Department, the Obama FBI, used the authority and the capability of the state and a bogus dossier to conduct surveillance on the Republican candidate for president and to infiltrate his campaign with spies. So FBI Director Wray today says, well, we respect the congressional oversight, at the same time refusing to hand over any information regarding that very FBI infiltration of the Trump campaign.
Dinesh, magically, Jim Comey already has written an op-ed for the New York Times. Okay, it comes out, it's already written, it's published today. I'm just going to share a small part of it. He said this independent assessment will be useful to thoughtful people and an important contribution to the historical record. Its detailed report should serve to both protect and build the reservoir of trust and credibility necessary for the DOJ and the FBI to remain strong and independent. Wild. The man has learned Zippo, Dinesh.
Well, you also see the collusion between the deep state operating behind closed doors and organs like the New York Times, which time these kinds of counterpoints to immediately try to diffuse the impact of the IG report. What I want to know here, Roger mentioned this notion of getting to the bottom of it. The tremendous kind of glee and sense of immunity with which these agents at the high level are operating suggests to me that they would not do it without someone giving the order. I mean, there's that question from The Godfather, who gave the order? And, you know, Lord, the old phrase, cui bono, who benefits is a good way to try to guess who gave the order. Now, Hillary benefits, but Hillary clearly couldn't have given the order. She was Secretary of State, and then she was out of the government. Obama, on the other hand, very much did not want Trump to win. He knew that Trump would try to erase his legacy. It would be very embarrassing for him to be succeeded by Trump. I wonder if Obama is the one who gave the order.
Well, Roger, we have some emails to that effect. Final thoughts. We already found out that the president lied when he said he found out about Hillary's, private email server when everybody else did. Now we find out he's one of the 13 people she communicated with on the private server with using that private email account. So he lied about that.
When you add to the fact that Peter Strzok says in one of his text messages, the president wants to know everything, the question's very clear. What did the president know and when did he know it? He needs to answer that question. I think he needs to answer it under oath to the Congress.
Well, he's going to be going out on the campaign trails. Apparently, he's the only person who can win elections for the Democrats. So he's going to be fanning out this election season. Thank you both. Phenomenal analysis, as always, from both of you. Now we have some breaking news on immigration to bring to you after the break. This is very important.